Welcome to the Transition Line Podcast, a triathlon podcast about the sport, the culture, and the lifestyle that surrounds it. I'm your host, multi-time Ironman spectator, Kyle Taylor, and I'm joined, as always, by my father, multi-time Ironman competitor with 29 trips to Kona under his belt, Greg Taylor. Dad, how are you?
You know what? I'm really excited about this weekend, and I'm excited about this podcast because we're going to talk about more than just the pros. I definitely want to dig into the amateur races and tell people what to expect and talk more about, well, what does it mean to be a triathlete?
So, Dad, tell me about the field in the upcoming race. Is this one of the more stacked fields we've seen in any of the races this year?
If we go back to last year's World Championship races, the women raced in Kona. And first place for the women last year in Kona was Solveig Loftseth, a Norwegian. Second place was Kat Matthews. And leading up until about mile 22 or 24, Taylor Knibb, until she ended up in a puddle in the pavement. Those three women are back again. If we look at the men's race, last year, three Norwegians were on the podium. Kasper Stornes, Gustav Iden, and Christian Blumenfeld. And all three of those men will be racing this weekend.
So it sounds like we've got a matchup between some of the top pros, including a rematch of last year's female pro race at the championship.
You know, we really do. And it's going to be interesting because last year, Kat Matthews won this race, and Taylor Knibb came in second. Taylor was well ahead on the swim, and she was about 6 minutes ahead on the swim. Taylor Knibb and Kat Matthews rode even, and then Kat simply outran her. So we'll see what happens this year because earlier in the season, Taylor Knibb won the 70.3 at Oceanside. So both women, I think, are here to make a statement, gather points, and get their slot for Kona. And that's really the second aspect that makes this race so important. For the first time in 7 years, the men and women will compete together on the same day on the Big Island. And they have 75 age group slots for the race, plus a number of professional slots. So this race is large from the prospect of points for the pro race or the pro series and for getting to Kona, both for the professionals and for the amateurs.
That's a great point. For the past, how many years has it been? 5 or 6 that Kona's been a 2-day race?
Well, 2019, it was the last single day race. And then in 2022, it was a 2-day race, Thursday for the women, Friday for the men. And that just brought in too many people. So subsequent to that, they split the race between Hawaii and Nice, France. And the men would race in one location and the women in the other, and then they would switch. So last year, the women raced in Kona, the men raced in Nice, France.
Now that everybody's back in Kona, the hype train is really rolling and everyone's very excited to get the spots this year and get back to the magic that is Kona. Is that right?
Oh, that's an understatement. I think it's going to be incredible, not only for coming back together, but they're going to expand the race to 3,000 athletes. So it's nothing to watch.
That's bigger than ever. That's incredible. Tell me more about the men's race. What's got you excited about the men's pro race?
Well, I think the most impressive thing is Christian Blumenfeld. Christian Blumenfeld had his front handlebars come loose, one of his aero bars come loose in New Zealand, so he didn't have the race he wanted. Then he raced the 70.3 in Geelong. He ran a 1:06 half marathon to run down the leaders. And then a week later, he shows up at Oceanside, gets off the bike 2 minutes behind American Sam Long, who had made up a swim deficit, had bolted to the front with some other athletes, and Christian Blumenfeld again outran them. So his fitness this year is staggering. And this becomes a point because Kasper Stornes was also in Oceanside, and he came in third place. But last year in Nice, France, Kasper Stornes went 2:29.25 in the marathon. So he laid it down and told everybody that's how fast he could be. Christian Blumenfeld went 2:34, and in between them was Gustav Iden, 2:32. Gustav's running hasn't been up to that par yet. But Casper Stornes and Christian Blumenfeld, I think, are there to make a statement.
So, Dad, it's safe to say that you are expecting an absolute battle on the run. Is that right?
This is going to be an impressive race, I think. And based on his performance in the run in the past 2 half Ironmans, I think Christian Blumenfeld's attitude is he's taking no prisoners. But I don't want to talk just about the Norwegians because this field is so deep. Patrick Lange from Germany will be there. He's won Kona 3 times. Not only that, we have American Sam Long will be there. Sam Long was leading Oceanside until a little more than halfway through the run. And he was solidly in second, got past, hanging on to third, and I don't think it was more than 200 yards from the finish when Casper Stornes passed him. Sam is known as a super biker, and that's where he demonstrated his ability at Oceanside. His deficit has always been the swim, and based on the current water temperature, the pro men and pro women will not be wearing a wetsuit. So I suspect Sam will be 4 to 6 minutes behind the pros, and then he's going to have to use what he calls the strongest legs in triathlon to make it up and catch them. Now, the other unknown factor, but a well-known triathlete, is Lionel Sanders. He's been injured, but he's coming back, and based on the videos online, his biking and running seem to be as strong as ever. Again, he has a swim deficit, and that swim deficit could leave him 4 to 6 minutes behind the lead pack. Now, in the past, the male pros and the female pros had a 12-meter draft zone. They've expanded that now to 20 meters. So if you're riding 20 meters behind someone, there is very minimal positive impact. And so we're going to see on this relatively flat course how well that plays out. But that should give the ultra bikers such as Sam Long and Lionel Sanders an opportunity to catch back up to the leaders who may outswim them. And then it'll be simply a matter of who's going to be able to hold it together on the run. We could see several male athletes coming off the bike together. And on this 3-loop run course, the spectators will have an absolute field day. Someone else I want to mention is Rudy Von Berg, another American. Rudy has been as high as 3rd in Kona, and he's not had the races he's won recently, but he is absolutely known as one of the most consistent male pros out there.
Shout out to Rudy Berg. You used to compete against his father in your age grouper days, didn't you?
I did. I first competed against his dad, I think it was 2002 in Kona, where I just edged him out. And then we met again later in Kona, and he beat me. We met in Quebec for the 70.3 World Championships. He was in a younger age group, and I remember him going by me on the bike. And he was an Uber biker at that time. And then the last time he and I competed, I believe, was in Chattanooga, where he was in my age group, and I managed to edge him out. So I've interacted and raced with Rodolphe many times, and haven't really had an opportunity yet to meet Rudy face to face, but someday I hope to.
Sounds like he's a great guy. I think we can probably confidently say that his son is faster than your son.
So next, I want to bring up the women, because the women are, it's going to be a brutal race for the women. Taylor Knibb in a non-wetsuit swim will likely put 5 or 6 minutes on her closest competitors. She's got near Olympic caliber cycling ability. And so it'll simply be a matter of whether she overbikes, how much of a lead she'll get on Kat Matthews. Because Kat Matthews, when she came in second in Kona last year, she ran a 2:47. That's in the heat, the humidity, and the hills. So this lady is fast on the run. Her swim deficit, she's going to have to try to make up on the run. So I suspect Taylor Knibb will get off the bike ahead of her, and then Kat Matthews will be chasing her down. And again, the spectators will have a great opportunity on this 3-lap course to see it play out.
All right, Dad, sounds like the spectators have an awesome pro race to look forward to on both the men's and the women's side. Let's pivot now. Tell me about the age groupers. I know there's a huge field, a Texas-sized amateur field out there. What do they have to look forward to?
Well, it's not going to be too hot. It's going to be 80, low 80s, maybe rain after 1 o'clock. But what they have to look forward to is 75 spots for Kona. And again, this is the first time Kona will be men and women on the same day for 7 years. And Ironman has restructured the way you qualify. In the past, they simply divided up the number of slots into the number of people in each age group. So a large age group, say 35 to 39, might have 450 athletes. Well, they might get 7 or 8 slots. An older age group, such as mine, that might have 10 or 12, they would only get 1 slot. They've done away with that. So the first rule is every age group winner is offered a slot. If they don't take it, they offer it to the second place finisher. If that person doesn't take it, they offer it to the third place finisher. If they don't take it, that slot and all the other slots go into what's called an age group pool. And that age group pool will now be used to determine who the best athletes in their age group were. And what they did was they looked back at the top 20% of the athletes in Kona over several years and came up with a scoring mechanism. And what they decided, or what they measured, was that the best age groupers were 30 to 34. Everyone else is then graded against that. They have a modifier that they apply to your time, which will effectively make your time faster. So I did some quick calculations here. Last year in Texas, the male 30 to 34 went 9 hours. The winner of the 60 to 64 age group went 9:56. But the 60 to 64 age group gets a 0.8262 modifier, making his age-adjusted time 8 hours and 12 minutes. So in that case,
he's faster than the young guy.
Female 30 to 34, she won in 9:28. The 60 to 64 winner went 12 hours. Her age-adjusted time was 9:39. So she was just barely behind it. And what they do is they divide all the slots in this pool based on how many men and how many women are in the race. And those percentages determine how many slots go into that particular age group pool. But in this case scenario, what they're saying is, let's say you're third in the age group, but you're 2 hours behind. Sorry, the guy in an older or younger age group who was only 2 minutes behind the winner, he's got a better performance. So it's an interesting tool that they have. And they have it, it's automatically calculated. And this should be really interesting to watch.
That is interesting. It's a neat math trick they're doing. It sounds like it should result in a more densely competitive field that is going to look a little different from year to year, because there'll be different amounts of different age groupers in different age groups, but it should always result in a more competitive total age group field.
That is the way. Right? That is the way I understand it. But there's another piece here that I haven't heard anyone discuss. So Greg Taylor is going to make his fourth recommendation to Ironman, which is you now have the ability, using this age grading, to come up with the fastest top 3 males and top 3 females based on age grading rather than absolute time. And I think that would generate a tremendous amount of interest. So in this case, a 65-year-old could be the fastest age group.
What about a 73-year-old?
If he didn't, a 73-year-old could be that way as well. So it eliminates the fact that the younger athletes are always faster. It gives you an age grading, so they could make it a little more interesting for the age groupers by saying, by the way, we're going to have a top 3 males and top 3 females, just like we do for the pros.
We mentioned that the pros are going to be stuck with a chilly non-wetsuit swim. And on the age group side, I believe they have a little bit higher temperature threshold, and we're going to be close to it. Is that right?
So professionals have to swim without a wetsuit if the temperature is above 71.5 degrees. For the amateurs, it's 76.1. And there's a fishing app that people can use to check water temperatures. And it's telling us that the water temperature in Woodlands Lake is anywhere between 78 and 71 degrees, depending on which part of the lake you're in. So this will depend a lot on just exactly where Ironman places the thermometer. And the rules say something like it has to be partway into the race course and at a certain depth. And I suspect that they will do their best to find a place where the temperature is going to allow wetsuits. That will, of course, impact the good swimmers poorly, and the poor swimmers, it'll impact quite nicely.
So you're saying that the stronger swimmers would prefer a non-wetsuit swim because that really allows them to flex their performance in that aspect.
Yes, exactly. And in a race of this nature, which I expect to be very competitive, a 2 or 3 minute difference, wetsuit or non-wetsuit, could make the difference between winning your age group and not winning your age group. So that'll play a big role for the amateur.
One of the most interesting things about the Houston race really is how spectator friendly it is. You know, the run is a 3-lap course, which means that spectators are going to get a great opportunity to see their athletes going by. You know, it's key to remember, especially for the age groupers, especially the competitive ones who are trying to qualify. You know, you can provide your athlete with splits, but you cannot pace them and you cannot assist them this course because they're so close. You're going to see them a lot. Don't get tempted. Don't run alongside them. That can be considered pacing. You know, you can always check with the race officials if you have any questions, but you know, make sure that you're out there supporting the athletes, but not putting your athlete at risk by running alongside them or anything like that. You know, any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
that piece, Dad?
splits can be critical to the athlete trying to get on the podium or trying to win their age group. Every race I've been at, when I've asked the race officials, they said giving an athlete split is perfectly legal. But do double check that with the race officials and make sure. But splits would be really critical to the most competitive athletes.
Some other interesting things about this course. You mentioned earlier that the bike course is very flat, and that there's some potential hazards if people don't prepare for a flat course.
Well,
way.
the professional athletes will be as well prepared as they can be. The amateur athlete might think that, well, it's a flat course, so it should be easier than a hilly course, and that's actually the exact opposite. If you're in a flat course, you're going to end up in the aero position for prolonged periods of time. And if you're not careful, it's kind of like rigor mortis can set in when you get off the bike and you're stuck in the bent over position. You don't want that. So my recommendation is that every aid station, you sit up, slow down, make sure you get the aid that you need, stand up and stretch several times every hour. And even at the special needs position, you might consider stopping to grab your special needs and put it on your bike. Anything that you can change your position on your bike to help. And then the last 5 kilometers or so of the bike ride, you might want to sit up, stretch, stand up to get prepared for the run, because the run is really where it comes down. The last 10 miles of the run are always the make or break part of the race.
And of course, with a run course that's multiple laps, the age groupers will also have to look out for those pros that might be running by them, lapping them a bit like an F1 race.
So that's
right?
An excellent point. To all of the amateurs, I would stress, stay to your right. They will probably mention this at the race meeting, but even on the bike, there's an opportunity potentially to catch up to some of the pros, because part of the bike is an out and back. And please stay to the right, because if you happen to be on the same bike course as the pro, they might be going literally twice as fast as you. And if you're on the run course, they're still going to be going. They're going to be running 6-minute miles. You might be running 10-minute miles. So stay to the right. Don't run shoulder to shoulder with people. There's going to be thousands of athletes on the course. So you want to make sure you don't interfere with the professionals or with the most competitive age group athletes.
Sounds like Houston's going to serve up an awesome Ironman race. Let's now pivot to Houston itself and talk a little bit about some of the exciting things that those athletes might do after the race. Are you ready, Dad? I've got some Houston fun facts for you and a couple of quiz questions.
I'm ready. Lay it on me.
Houston is one of the biggest cities in America. Would you guess it is larger or smaller than London?
London as in England? London.
That's right. London, England. Which is bigger? Houston, Texas.
I got to go with London.
London, England. spot on, but not by much. They're about the same size. Greater London is about 10 square kilometers bigger than Greater Houston. They're almost the same size. It might not seem that way because when you look out past Houston, there's just more Texas, and it keeps going. But they're actually almost the same size. It's wild. It's basically a small country. There are 2.3 million people who live there. That's more than all of Slovenia. It's more than all of Latvia. So Houston, absolutely giant country. Question for you, does that make it an international championship?
The size and location doesn't, but when you think about the number of athletes that are there from around the world, yeah, it is kind of an international championship.
Yeah, I guess if you think about it that way, most Ironman races turn into something of an international championship. So now that the whole globe is one big training camp. So Houston's geography is incredibly flat. We mentioned that in the run course or in the bike discussion earlier. Would you rather climb for an hour or ride flat
I'd rather
forever?
climb for an hour.
It's more interesting, right? Gives you something to do.
Climbing for an hour, you can pretend to be Greg LeMond beating Bernard Hinault up Alpe d'Huez. You can pretend you're in the Tour de France, and I've actually raced some Tour de France caliber climbs when I did World's Toughest Triathlon back in the early 90s. So climbing for an hour, that would be on my list before riding flat forever.
Yeah, it makes sense. One of the other things Houston known for, heat and humidity. Have you ever spent time training in a climate that felt like it was a weighted vest?
Yes, I've trained in Hawaii, and I've actually trained in heated rooms where the room temperature was over 110 degrees to prepare for Hawaii. So yeah, it felt like a weighted or heated vest. And I'm glad you mentioned there's two different protocols for heat training. One is to prepare yourself to sweat less and lose less sodium. The other is to use it as an adjunct to improve your aerobic fitness. And each of those has a slightly different protocol. That's something we can bring up at one of our later podcasts.
Well, everybody enjoy Texas. Make sure you pepper in lots of howdies and a hook 'em horns. Remember, any group of people that's more than 6 is all y'all, and any group of less than 6, that's just y'all. That's going to cover our Texas segment for today. One more thing to talk about before we're out. Dad, back in your day racing, there was a guy named Mark Allen. Some people called him the Zen Master. Now, many triathletes today, some of the younger ones, may not remember this man, but he was once known for being not only one of, if not the most dominant pro to race in his era, but also for being a man of few words and Zen wisdom. He's recently taken to Substack to write, and one of his recent articles posits that triathlon is not elitist, it's hard. I know you read the article. I read the article. We had some thoughts. Let's take the audience through it. What did you think about what Mark had to say?
Well, Mark's absolutely right. It's hard. The race is hard, and it places great demands on your time, your dedication, your commitment. And I think what Mark was trying to address is it gets expensive to go to a race like Texas. The entry fees are high. Travel and accommodations are getting much more expensive. But what he was trying to say, I think, was, look, if you put in the time and the effort, you can do this. And so it's not elite in the sense that you need to be a world-class triathlete. You need to have Olympic caliber statistics. You need to just put in the time. And my view has always been that one of the unique features of Ironman is that you specifically don't need to be a world-class athlete. You need to put in the time. And it probably rewards time and effort more directly than some of the shorter races.
Yeah, Mark posits that the question is, what happens when you test yourself honestly with no shortcuts? And I would agree with him. That question hasn't changed. I would potentially argue, though, that triathlon might be a bit elitist. And if it is, that's okay. I think about the fact that triathlon's 3 sports that other people might spend their whole lives trying to perfect, and you're going to go out and do all three in the same day. Feels a little elitist just in and of itself,
If you're
right?
doing it at a high level, it really is, because at the top level, even in the age group, you're competing against superb swimmers, excellent cyclists, and fast runners. So in that regard, it is elite from what it takes to do well at the top end of the sport. But I can tell you this, if you go to Houston and you look at the people, you almost cannot figure out who's racing and who's not. And that's completely different than if you go to a world championship where everyone looks like they did the Tour de France for training. But you go to Houston and you'll look around, and what you'll find is, gosh, if they can do it, maybe that's something I could at least think about doing.
You're saying that triathlon really is more for everyone now than it's
I
ever
think that's
been?
a good point. It really is. There are races all over the country, and from the local events here in Utah, we've got several small local events that will have a few hundred competitors, and they're always the same in that everyone who finishes the race, of all the people that finish, no one ever says, I wish I hadn't done that. Now, depending on how hard the race was, they might say, I might not do it again, but don't believe them. Frequently, they will. So it is open to virtually everyone. And Mark's saying it's not at least elitist, it's hard. I would modify that a little bit to say it's not complicated, it's just hard.
It's a great point. Mark writes that exclusivity is not always imposed from the outside. Sometimes it's projected from within, and goes on to talk about how triathletes often force themselves into deciding that they have to have the best bike, the best gear, and travel far away to the best races. And while there are more and more exclusive destinations to go race at, there's also more and more local races. And I know that that's how you got your start. And I imagine that there's probably more opportunity now than there was 30 or 40 years ago to get that
I think
start.
you're right about that. I know that here in the Salt Lake area, where we just have a few reservoirs, there's probably 6 or 8 races that I could have done. I'm not that far from Boise, Idaho, that's going to have an Ironman 70.3. If you're anywhere in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul region, there's probably a race every weekend beginning in May through early September. Other parts of the country, there just are lots of events. And whether it's put on by local volunteers or whether it's put on by Ironman, you have opportunities to compete. And what I would say is, and then we have our national governing body, the USAT, United States of America Triathlon Association. They sanction races around the country, but they also have a national championship, and that tends to move around. I haven't raced that for a few years, but the several times I did, they take a rather nondescript location and turn it into a world-class venue. So, and the entry to get into a USAT national championship is wider than it is for Ironman. And so it wouldn't take much for someone to qualify and then to go to an event where there's 3,000 to 5,000 athletes.
So maybe the argument is that it's both. It's both elitist, but more approachable than it's ever been. And that can be okay, I guess. Things can be two things at the same time.
Two things can be true. On your point about the bike, yeah, you could spend $12,000 or $15,000 on the bike, or you could spend $1,200 on a bike. And while the $1,200 bike will be marginally slower, my response would be ride more, and you'll get plenty out of it. You have a long way to go before your equipment holds you back. You will need a good wetsuit, and those are going to go from $400 to maybe $1,000. And the $400 wetsuit is going to come real close to the performance of the $1,000 wetsuit. Running shoes recently, they've come up with the carbon plate shoes, and those are a bit pricey, but they make a world of difference. So it's really your bike that's the expensive part, and you need to get into it. There are bikes available. There are places that you can purchase them online. Used bikes are available. And yeah, you could borrow a bike.
So that's the truth. Elitist while also more approachable than ever. Thanks for the thoughts on that, Dad. As we wrap up here, any surprise predictions for this weekend? What do you think the wild card for the race in Houston is going to be this weekend?
Yella Geens. Last year at the 70.3 World Championships, he and Christian Blumenfeld were exchanging body blows for the last mile or more. And at the very end, he out-sprinted Christian and won by 3 seconds. I think Christian Blumenfeld's performances this year in the 70.3s is something like, not this year. Plus, this will be Yella's first iron distance race. So it'll be interesting to see. If he can come out of the swim and off the bike with the lead pack, we'll see if he can hold his speed on the run. If he does, this could be a battle to the finish, a lot like the Nice World Championship was last year for the men. We could have 4, 5, or 6 men get off the bike together and duking it out with slowly one person fading. Casper Stordus, Christian Blumenfeld, Yella Geens, these guys could make it like a 12-round boxing match.
We're in for an awesome race on Saturday, it sounds like. Thank you to the audience for tuning in to the first episode of Transition Line. I'm Kyle Taylor. This is my dad, Greg Taylor. We'll see you next time.